Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Chat. And I'm very excited to introduce to you a new friend of mine whose name is Jacob Cooper. We just had a little chat before coming on, and I'm really excited to share his energy with you. The one thing that I was drawn to regarding Jacob is I had discovered that he is an NDE. So, for my listeners who don't know what that is, he's experienced a near death experience. But the difference between him and the other people that I have listened to who have experienced it is his experience happened when he was a young boy. And so that's what I want to target into. I also want to chat with him regarding his new, not it's not a new book, it's one of his first books, Breath, Life After Breath, which is the title that I absolutely love. But anyway, I could go on and yap, 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 and I don't want to do that. I want to bring Jacob on right now and say hello. So, hello, Jacob.
Helen, it's so wonderful to be on your podcast and just wonderful that we're connecting and very proud of the work that you do, in your mediumship work and now expanding this on a podcast platform. And it's just honored to be on your show here today.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Look how quickly you turned it around on me and my mediumship, and we're making this show about you. How sweet are you? And I'm still a newbie. Like, I'm only been doing this for what, a year and a bit. I think you're probably more of a pro at it. Oh, speaking of which, we did not bring this up in our previous chat. Next Level Soul. Hello, you were on Alex Ferrari's show.
That's right. Yeah, I was on Alex about like a little bit over a year ago. We
Wow.
had the conversation and it's been pretty cool. And I've been doing this for around a decade now. And here and there you have some just, you meet, well, we meet amazing people all the time, but that's a conversation that, a lot of people seem to bring up and has caused recognition. And if it helps
Mm-hmm.
someone else's day, then that's wonderful,
I
you know.
just discovered that before we came on, and I was like, okay, now I need to go back because I love all his guests. I haven't been able to listen to all of them, but most of them, that's one of the reasons why I love to keep driving up north to my little place is so that I can listen to podcasts, which is what, just over two
Huh,
hours. So guess what I'm going to do
yeah.
next weekend? I'm going to go back and listen to your show because I love his platform. So I would just want to mention that to my listeners. It's called it's one level. Is it one level show? One
Next
next level
next
soul.
instead of it's like a play on words with next level, you know what, but next
Yeah,
level soul
next
instead.
level soul. And you were his
And
guest.
yeah, I think what draws people to Alex is very grounded, very
Yes.
easy to talk to, very down to earth, asks really spot on questions and has a great following. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
now I feel more honored and blessed to have you on my show. So, and here I am pushing all my listeners to go to Alex Ferraris. But I just love the guests that he have because he's making such a difference in this world in such a short
Yeah.
time of his amount of followers. So back to you. So do you want to share your experience or do you want to? I know that we mentioned we were just going to have this beautiful conversation and just let it flow. But I do want
Mhm.
my listeners to know a little bit more about your experience because that is one of the main reasons. Because for me personally, I just love listening to. Oh my goodness, you're holding a crystal. I'm holding a crystal.
I in any conversation I
Yeah,
hold it and
I've never seen anyone else hold a crystal during some kind of podcast, even through my sessions. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I
Sorry.
love it. And yes, I hold it. It helps me to channel it, but also when I do hold it, I try to send white
Mm,
light to any
I
viewer who
love
is
it.
listening. When I do hold it, and this is a beautiful crystal that one of my relatives got for me at the Tucson Gem Show. And probably the biggest gem show, it is actually the biggest gem show in the world. The second is in Munich, Germany. But a lot of people, they'll go to these new age stores and they'll charge like 10 times the amount for
Yeah.
crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Best bet is to go to a gem show, particularly the one in Tucson. You'll get better deals, probably better quality, depending on the vendors that you purchase it from. But yeah, this is a beautiful quartz that I just hold to send white light to clear. But
I love it.
back to NDEs. Yeah, I'd certainly love to share. It is a phenomenon that is getting a lot more traction. It's been around for
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years.
Yes.
But a dear friend of mine in the 70s was very daring and vulnerable with this professional background to really look at this intensely. And that man, his name is Dr. Raymond Moody. He coined the term
Yes, I'm familiar with him.
near-death experience in his best-selling book, Life After Life, which my
Hmm.
book, as you mentioned, Life After Breath, is kind of a homage to his
Yes.
book. But Raymond, absolutely brilliant, but also the nicest, most approachable man that you could find. But he was very daring because he was in academia. He had a dual doctorate in philosophy as well as
Hmm.
psychiatry, and he just encountered people within his classrooms and his walks of life who was having these things, and I believe, wanted to just quantify what this was. It wasn't to prove anything, it really was to really examine this from a research angle. And at this point, Raymond obviously does have a knowing
Yes.
of eternity. But they are fascinating, and I do think the reason is it's very similar to the work that you do, where it's a piece of evidence of eternity
Hmm.
that someone in front of you has been clinically dead, or at the very least has had little to no brainwaves or heart rhythms going on, and they still have this full-fledged recollection and evidence that comes from it. And so it really puts into a corner the material reductionism, which states that once the body goes, so too does our consciousness, so too does our own functionality. And near-death experiencers really defy that and
Hmm.
put that ideology into a corner where they just don't have answers as to why this phenomenon works. If indeed brainwave activity is at a minimal to no level, and yet people are able to have these profound evidential
Hmm.
experiences, including those who are maybe visually impaired their whole lives or auditorily impaired, and for the first time they're able to see, hear sounds or see colors and describe those things
Yep.
with no reference in their whole lives. So fascinating, but again, it's a proof of, to me, it's another angle of eternity that people are really gravitating to, and it's very tangible, as literally I and thousands of other people are literally the walking dead in front of you, and we've gone to that point and recognized there is no death, that the soul goes on. And I would say, um, if near-death experiences have this, if there is no death, what can't stop you in your soul? You really are literally unstoppable. There's nothing that you cannot
You're
overcome.
not
And
afraid.
yeah, death is arguably
Hmm.
the biggest fear in addition to public speaking. And I do both quite frequently.
Hmm.
Not die, but I talk about death, and I do public
Yeah.
speaking, and I have been there. But I would say it really does give a bit of massage for the soul in an understanding of our own power and how resilient we are as beings, how the thing that's supposed to be the ultimate ending doesn't exist. It makes you wonder, what can't you do? What can't you overcome?
Hmm.
But to answer your question, I love that you mentioned that, because there's a lot of people who will have a categorization of near-death experiencers, and they'll say, "Oh, if you're an adult, I'll believe you, but if you're a child,
Hmm.
mm, you know, that I don't trust." And what I'd say is, the body does not produce the soul. The soul has always been in the body. And just because the body, the instrument, can't articulate properly what's inside of the soul does not mean that soul is not ancient, is not
Exactly.
old. And sometimes people have a synonymous viewpoint of the body and the soul. That chronological age is the same as the soul age, and it couldn't be further from the truth, which I think is one of the messages of my near-death experience, that we have a body, we're not a body, but we have an eternal soul within that body. And it's important to start to look people more so on who they really are. And people then could
Hmm.
remember that point, because
And I
there's a
have a
great deal.
feeling, I have a strong feeling you get a lot of people that tell you you are an old soul. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think the question that I get is, are you an old soul, or did this experience change you so to become evolved? And I think a little bit of both.
A bit of both, yeah.
I think in our culture, old has a great degree of
Hmm.
stigmatization. But I think in the spirit realm, from the spiritual perspectives, the chronological older and the chronological younger are two very misunderstood and I feel disrespected population sectors because on one hand, many times people who live on this planet have a lot of hopeful wisdom to have, unless they lived 95 years and haven't lived one day like a lot of people. But if they lived a full life and maximize those
Mm-hmm.
chronological
Mm-hmm.
years, there's a lot to take in. And kids are just coming from the other side, and so they have a lot less amnesia than the average person. And but they're told, hey, you don't know anything, and I'm just going to vomit all my stuff on you, and I want you to just run away from that child, to grow up and to just forget, to stop being a kid and to just be a serious adult. And so there's a great degree of abandonment and self-disempowerment that comes in our cultural upbringings. And
Mm-hmm.
I think people come to spirituality because it's like, I've checked off every box that societal has prescribed to me. It just is not working. There's something missing. And I think the solution is a solution for a lot of people that finally they're able to listen to that part. But yeah, Soul Age is something that certainly fascinates me
Mm-hmm.
for certain, because we get grouped in from day one with our classmates, and we're just kind of say, hey, we're all the same age. And I don't know about you, but I've had classmates that I just felt like thousands of years older, and teachers as well, where I was with the teacher, and I'm like, this person like is shallower than like a kiddie pool. Like there's nothing there. I don't know. There's like nothing there, not to, and they're at their own level of development, but chronologically they may be older, but on an evolution basis, you're like, 1 out of 10, they may be like a 1 or 2, and
Yeah,
as a kid, you're like a 7 or 8, and all of a sudden you have to take this subservient role and saying, you're right, I'm wrong, and I'm here to listen to everything. And that's leads to a lot of defiant behaviors, I think, within kids.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So
Yeah.
do you want to
But
share with my listeners your
yeah, I'm
experience?
sorry. I'm sorry for going all over the place here. It's part of my
I do
ADHD.
it all the time.
Slash New Yorker. We could talk a mile a minute. But I had my NDE in September of 1993. Hey, that rhymes. But I was just 3 years old, and I grew up in the Jewish tradition, and at the time of having my NDE, I found out that it was right around the time of a big Jewish holiday called Yom Kippur, which
Hmm.
translates to the Day of Atonement, a day in which the soul is ready to greet its creator, ready
Oh,
to
wow.
greet God. Little did I know I was about to meet God, but it was far beyond the confines of, kind of like a boring synagogue kind of thing, right? Just hang out there for hours. This is a literal, meeting. But I went to a park as a young boy, and at the time I had a condition called pertussis, where if you're not familiar with it, it's also known generically as whooping cough. And if you're an infant or child, or
Hmm.
even some people that I know who even work in this field as adults, like whooping cough could be fatal, if not a very serious condition if left untreated. But I had this condition. My parents did not know this at the time. They just thought, oh, we just got a little allergies or it
Hmm.
wasn't anything that bad. But I went to the playground, I started climbing a ladder, going onto a slide, and at the top, I just began to get into this coughing spree where I just completely lost any gasp of air. I wasn't able to breathe, and when you can't breathe, you can't really function in the
Hmm.
body. And so I
Hmm.
just felt every single part of my body shutting down one unit at a time to the point where there was nothing to hold on to. And I think that was arguably the scariest moment of my life. It's like you feel like you're drowning and you're trying to just grasp for something to hold on to you. And there was nothing, no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't get anything. And it was just the most traumatizing moment
Hmm.
of my life, which
Hmm.
again, I do believe is a great gift that I'm able to have such degree of recall, as trauma could be quite dissociative for self-protection, or you could have vivid, clear recalls if there's no time that's transpired from the traumatic event. I mean, it's like I asked most of my friends my age, it's like, where were you 9/11? And everyone knows, but you'll say, where were you 9/15? I don't know, So
Yeah.
when big events happen, we're able to take ourselves back to that moment as if
Hmm.
no time has passed. And that's a funny neurological imprint that trauma makes in the brain. But speaking of neurological, I literally, because of my suffocation, felt my brain, and literally, due to the deprivation of oxygen, I just felt and saw my brain just snap in half, and I felt this tremendously loud crack within my brain. And once I felt this, all of a sudden I was able to rise above. And as the saying goes, my brain cracked open, and that's when God came in. And that happened to me on a literal basis. I just
Hmm.
felt myself really having this full crossing over experience and felt vibrational frequencies and just felt my soul rise upwards to eternity, to infinity, to an endless state of euphoria where there was no limitations of how good and how high I felt. I mean, in the body, we're used to feeling good, but there's always seems to be a cap, like no matter what, no matter how good food you have or whatever the hell, it's just there's always something stopping you in the
Hmm.
body at times. And when I was on the other side, there was literally nothing stopping that ascension. Moments later, I was able to really see and experience the creative source of where all of life flows, which in our culture, religion, we call that God. I don't try to use that word because you
Hmm.
can't possibly describe what I saw. But to me, it was just where everything emanates from. And it was represented in this beautiful palace. And I was able to see angels behind it. And I tried to look at it and it was just almost too bright. But I just knew it was this endless pinnacle of where all of life comes from. And it was beyond words. In moments later, I just felt a sense of attachment to my 3-year-old body, and I just started to wonder what would my parents, do, like if I go and cross over, and what would I look like? What would my life be like? It felt like a story that still had some meat on the bone. I'm sorry if you're a vegan, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm not.
There was more. There was more. It just like felt like unfinished business.
Hmm.
But then I just saw this moment in time where no matter what, my parents and I would be able to meet at a certain point, and all would be well. But in that moment, I just felt this incredible, endless horizon of a sky and this vibrational frequency. And I felt a sense of peace in being in this presence that I now call as Christ consciousness. This wasn't Jesus coming in front of me. This was much deeper. This was the actual consciousness of Christ. And bear in mind, congruent with near-death experience, um, case studies, I had no exposure whatsoever in my lifetime to Jesus, being that we were both Jewish. But of course, I grew up Jewish, and Jesus was not a Christian. He was just a Jewish
Hmm.
progressive rabbi, I would say, who people created a religion out of. But I was able to encounter this awareness, and it put a sense of ease and peace and comforting, but also in knowing that no matter what, all is well, was well, will be well, and all of my fears and worries just seemed to really dissipate. Moments later, I was able to be aware of my two primary spirit guides that were
Oh.
with me at this moment, and I felt they were beyond incredible. When I think of at least spirit guides and when I saw my own, it's the one detail for whatever reason that I don't seem to be able to recall, but I was able in that moment to have their names clear as crystal. And they were a male and female guide, and they were absolutely stunning, and their light was emanating, and it just felt like, who am I for you to like be with me? And it felt like, if you ever have like this infatuation with some like Hollywood starlet or whatever, but just imagine that person has that same degree of infatuation that you have towards them, that they had towards you, and you're like, what the heck, like me? But it felt a sense of reunion, but also I couldn't believe that I forgot that they were with me every step of the journey. They were with me the whole time. I just, like anyone else, had my blinders on. And it felt like a great reunion. And I was able to be quite assured to be in their presence. It was more of a telepathic
Hmm.
communication of
Did
just
they share with you
the
that
feeling.
they were your spirit guides? Did they share that with you?
I It was a
You
knowing.
felt it.
It wasn't,
You felt it.
they didn't have to explain a word. It was a clear knowing.
Okay.
It was instant, and it felt like the closest extension of my soul possible. And I think that's what guides are. We can accrue certain guides throughout our lifetimes,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
before we get here, in the charting phase of our lives, we have an unnegotiable contract with our primary guides. I don't believe everyone has primary guides. Some souls may be more of an interplanetary nature or more from an angelic realm, where their guides may be their higher self. But I think for myself and most people who are earth-based souls, we do have,
A
usually
team.
one to two primary
Yeah.
guides.
Hmm.
Yeah,
They call them
yeah.
master. Wouldn't that be called
Um,
a master guide?
there's different like
From the
lingo,
time,
like
like
I want to.
that's what I heard is most of us would have a master guide from the time you take your first breath to your last breath, you've made that
Mhm.
contract with them. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you want to call it Great Britain, UK. It kind of describes the same. It's different lingo for it. I call them, for me, the guides or primary guides.
Hmm.
But I do believe throughout lifetimes we'll have other guides come to us. And
Yes.
again, I think much like life is magneticism, like we'll attract our vibe will attract our tribe. Same thing over there. Like, I don't know, I could care less about golfing. So I don't think like some like golfer from the other side is going to come to me and hang out. Like, that's not my thing. But
No,
I don't know,
no.
if you're Tiger Woods, you might have, Jack Nicholson when he passes away one day,
Hmm.
like being with him or something like that. Or if he hasn't yet, I don't know golf, like, or Arnold Palmer, I don't know, one of these great legendary guys. But so I think really the guides will come into us that they're able to really see a part of themselves in you. So and that's a big part of it. Or if we invoke that person as well. But they were there with me. My body again was on the floor, irresponsive to, everyone who was trying to wake me up. I could see them, and I could probably understand how spirits feel when you channel them, where we're like they want to shake their loved ones,
Hmm.
tell them they're okay. Like I felt I was a spirit. I know how that feels, and I think we all do from, having a lot of life between lives and incubation period on the other side. But in that moment, I was just able to see all the people around me. And I was around, people who were not like the Dalai Lama types that you would picture. They were more
Hmm.
like CPA types, very grounded people, but very earthy. But when I saw around them, I just saw these beautiful, magnificent, spirit guides and angels around them and auras. And, looking back in it, I just know at our core, most of us are really pure divine beings. Some people remember that and continue that. Some forget it, but it's like, no matter what, you squeeze an orange juice, you squeeze an orange, you're gonna get orange juice. That's
Hmm.
our essence. That's who we are. And moments later, I just saw this thin veil, like right above this reality at the playground on that day. All these angels floating right in front of me. And I can't tell you how thin of a veil it is between this realm and the angels all around us on this planet. They're here and it was so clear that they were right in front of me. And these are very youthful and very young angels that I saw, but they were literally floating right in front of me, like, holy crap, like they're right here,
Hmm.
right in front of me. And I
Beautiful.
was still like getting adjusted, but I'm like, for us, we're used to like if we give to someone, we expect something in return. We have a sense of self. And the spirit guides have more of their own individual identities. They were not perfect beings in a way, but closest thing that I've ever seen to it. Whereas angels were to me like a higher frequency. The angels that I saw, they had no concept of self other than just giving healing, giving love to the planet. And that's all that they were there for. There was no separate identity. They were just kind of like this angel factory of God, just sending
Mm.
healing, sending love, and I could hear their sounds, and it was very high vibrational. But they were just there to send. And then moments later, I had family that I knew as what we call as a soul pod come up to me that I just knew we've been many plays on the theater of life together in
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
roles. And they came their way, and in that moment, I was just posed a question, which is, would I stay? Should I stay or should I go? Is that 80s song says, I believe. I forget the song, but which is
Should I
rare.
stay or should I
Most,
go now?
yeah, that's it.
I didn't do
And
it.
I know you, I know you're very musically inclined. Definitely a Prince fan from our earlier conversations.
Yeah.
But and again, we could get into certainly music and how pivotal that is in connecting. But most near-death experiencers are told, hey, there's more work to do, there's more karma, there's more dharma to do on your path. I would say around 25% probably are given autonomy for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why. I'm sure there's nuance and subjectivity to that. But I just kind of got a little bit of my businessman hat on, and I said, well, if I stay, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Just that simple, direct
Mm-hmm.
question. And with that direct question, I was able to get direct answers where I had this, life review. And most people are like, that must have been the shortest film possible. You're just 3 years old. And
A short
what
clip.
what I have to what I have to preface is it's really not a matter of the years of your life, but as corny as it sounds, but the life within your years. And I experienced a great deal of life, not just through my own lens, but through the eyes of another and through the
Mm-hmm.
people that encounter. But this life review transcended this life, and it went through a lot of other prior incarnations that I've lived, to the point where I got to my last life, and I just saw that I don't, as I'm working in the mental health field, I don't say commit when it comes to, ending our own life. I would just say completed, death by even, because I don't try to criminalize,
Mm-hmm.
someone else's pain, much like I wouldn't say someone else committed cancer or heart disease. It's not a sign of a weakness. It's just a sign that there's there's too much for the soul to really handle at the moment. Not for the soul, but for the human part of ourselves. The soul could handle anything, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just saw that in that moment, I was able to encounter my students that I had in this lifetime. And I felt a knowing that it all was going to work out had I just trusted, but also there was an acceptance, there was no judgment, there was a healing that I saw my life between lives on the other side. But in that moment, I saw how from completion we begin and how my near-death experience is really very much related to that last lifetime, where a sense that I felt my back was against the wall,
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing that I saw possible, and I felt that same sensation when I suffocated. This time, though, my soul really decided to understand this for a lesson for myself and for others, which is the power of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And from losing my own human breath, I was able to surrender to the breath of eternity. So I don't think surrender is giving up, but rather giving in to this impenetrable power that we all have inside of us. And from doing that, that transcended moments of my greatest despair to the most euphoric experience that I've had in this lifetime. And then that moment, I was just showing myself speaking in front of a large group of people. And it wasn't like I was some pompous self-help guru, on all these talk shows, whatever. It was more just the message. It wasn't
Messenger.
about the ego, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
about the platform, the money. All those things are constructs of the ego. This was just about the message and what people needed to hear. And I said it, really as beautiful as the other side is this moment to deliver this, to allow people to just remember who they are, is a weight that we could create heaven on earth, by remembering who we are and having that belief, transform and transcend, our behavior. And with that agreement, everything started to dissipate. And I just was kicking myself saying, oh my God, what did I just do? And then the guides just left me with the last message, which is
Mm-hmm.
really to trust in an intelligence far greater than our own doubts and the power of how our thoughts can be in parallels with theirs through surrendering. And really to be careful about where we place our energy, our attention, our thought
Mm-hmm.
patterns, how that could really help us to be aligned with our life plan and with the guides and with higher intelligence or governed by, a lower vibrational, kind of trajectory. And with that, I woke up in a hospital bed and the rest is kind of history. But there's, I'm sure a lot of questions or comments, but that's a little bit of the short of my NDE that I had in September of 1993, which
93.
every day
Wow.
has been a part of me. And I can tell you, Helen, it feels like just a second ago. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I was 3 years old. Like in prior interviews, I would just say I was 4, I was 5. Like it couldn't, on my human side, I couldn't believe it was that long ago, and that I was 3 years old. But yeah, having throughout the last couple of years talked to my parents a little bit more about this, I've been able to understand
Yeah.
a little bit more from the human side of things.
And how long do you think you were in that? in that visit? Like how felt like
I, you know,
5 minutes, 10 minutes, couple minutes?
my my parents weren't there, so I often ask. I was with my mom's really good friend who babysat me and took me to the park
Oh,
often. So I don't know, but it's kind of like if you ever read C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They go into this wardrobe, and it's very allegorical for Christ in the life that he lived. But they go into this wardrobe and they just experience this
magical world.
magical world, and they come back and they're just the same, and there's not a second that has transpired. And
Yeah.
for me, that it kind of felt a little bit like this. Obviously, sometime transpired because I was rushed from the ambulance to the hospital, and I woke up in a hospital
In the
bed,
hospital.
and I was
Okay.
kind of going in and out. So I would say, that had to be at least, 45 minutes, an hour. But the chronological time is so different
Mhm.
than the time in the spirit realm where that felt for such a long time. And chronologically, it was probably only an hour. I don't know. And it wasn't that long. So,
And how long before you decided to share your experience? Like, were you still in the same age, or did you wait longer? Could you share your
yeah.
experience to your parents?
Well, no. I think that it was something so sacred, and also something that just words couldn't possibly encompass, that I didn't even bother. It was something that I just really kept to
Hmm.
myself. My father recently just told me that I came up to him, like a couple of years after my experience, and I said, hey, Dad, remember when I was rushed by the ambulance to the hospital? Something happened that day.
Hmm.
One day you'll understand, but for now, I'm not going to talk about it because it's not going to make sense. And, my dad's a very honest guy. He's not a new age woo guy. He was
Yep.
left brain,
Yep.
psychotherapist type, intellectual, so it just was affirmative to hear that. But I would say it took me around probably 2 decades to really start to talk about this
Put it into
experience,
words.
put into words. And I think the big turning point was the societal permission to do this. I was given a book to me probably in my early 20s by an author named Betty Eadie, who was on the Oprah Winfrey Show,
Hmm.
and she
Hmm.
had a book called Embraced by the Light.
I read it.
And once I read, yeah, and that
Yeah.
was Betty was like one of the real NDE champions who was able to get real mainstream
Hmm.
on a real, national, international audience. And so I do give her credit for having that courage, as I do give Raymond. But
Hmm.
after reading Betty's book, I'm like, wow, there's actually a term for this. There's other people who've had this, and there's like a language for this. It was hard because I'm like, okay, you're not that special, like other people's had it, but at the same time, there was a lot of catharsis knowing that I was not alone. And more importantly, it allowed me to understand how this could be something that could be helpful to others. I think oftentimes for ourselves, we'll have all these beautiful experiences and gifts, but if we hold on to them, they don't have much meaning. But if we let them go and share them to others, then they live out their purpose and their meaning. But for ourselves, we're like, yeah, it's cool, but it's just kind of a story. And that's the difference of karma and dharma.
Hmm.
Karma is like, it's the story, but we're able to evolve karma through our dharma, through our meaning that we have, through the narrative.
And also, I wanted to ask you, do you find that you may have been gifted, like you came back with gifts? Because I find that a lot of
Mhm.
NDEers, they do come back with either, they're very telepathic or they're just, as for yourself, you're
Mhm.
very empathic. Do you
Mhm.
find that you may have received, some form of gifts that way?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mentioned before that my brain literally was deprived of oxygen,
Yes.
snapped in half. And after that, I don't remember much about my childhood, but I do remember sitting in a preschool classroom and having the sliver of light that was going in and out of my brain. And it really is congruent with near-death experience research, which is really that the brain does not produce consciousness, it just
Hmm.
filters it.
Okay.
And when the brain is open, that's when really our mind could open up. And also, it really shaked up my brain chemistry because there is a part within the brain that they now know is called the pineal gland
Hmm.
that relates itself to intuition. But having this experience, my brain was really, drastically shifted. And thus, I was able to have a lot of spirit communication. I was kind of like a young Helen Peacock, if you will, where as a kid, I would purposely try to go to the bathroom just so I could get quiet
Mm-hmm.
and kind of get high and talk to spirit and have these downloads and conversations. And so I felt a lot more comfortable over there and crossing over to that
Mm-hmm.
realm
Mm-hmm.
than staying on this realm. But then came a point in time where that was blocked and I was just told, hey, you're meant to be here, dude.
Mm-hmm.
There's a window of incubation that a lot of near-death experiencers have, where they'll often go in and out, for a bit of time after their experience, and it's hard to translate, but certainly intuition, mediumistic abilities, interdimensional communication was heightened then, and it's been throughout my life, and I do get a lot of downloads that come. It's not so much like reading people maybe per se that you do, it's more so like these messages that come through me. And oftentimes I read that, I'm like, there's no way in hell I wrote that, but I know that was from
Yeah.
spirit, because small me can never do that.
And
So definitely a lot more
do you ever
open.
share any of your downloads when you're doing any of your Reiki sessions at all?
They do come to me, and just, kind of being aware and cognizant of the client, but certainly they do come to me.
Mm-hmm.
But and I feel at this point I'm more called to messages of teachings and insights from the spirit realm, and those kind of come to me on like a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis. Um, if my energy is heightened, they come to me a lot easier. If I'm a little bit more burnt out, not as
Not
much.
as much, yeah.
But again, when you're vibing higher, that's when you're able to pick up, a lot easier on these things that are always around us. We just have to match the frequency. I just have to match the frequency. But they do come to me, and certainly in my first two books that I have written, they have been a part,
You just view in
very
my
part.
head. I was just about to ask you about your books.
Yeah,
It's just about to
they've
go
been a
there.
bit, they've been a big part of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
But on paper, there's no way in heck that I should be a one who's an author. I was a struggling student throughout the vast majority of life. Having this experience was just very hard to focus. I had a lot of trauma symptoms, and so I had a
Mm.
lot. But and so I was in community college, and they put me in the lowest possible level for writing and reading. I wasn't even allowed to take credited courses. It was that bad. And so these two books are just for me. Um, it shows the power of what spirit can do and how when you get out of your own way,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how you see yourself as a human level, we all have a connection to the extraordinary. You don't have to be extraordinary to experience it. In fact, it's been the most ordinary people who have had the most extraordinary impact by getting out of their own way. But that's been a big part of my downloads has been the books that I write.
And when you were writing the Life After Breath, did you notice if anything like more information came for you? Because you know how they
Mhm.
say once you start writing, you start remembering more. Did you have that experience at all?
I would say it felt like something that the spirit realm was certainly a part of.
Or channeling?
And this it was a channeled kind of book, and it wasn't like a random book that just sat in front of the computer. This was downloaded,
Mm,
and it came from another place. Like I just kind of like put myself out of the way, and whatever was meant to be in that book was in that book. But for myself, I sort of think talking about it puts you immersation to it. And I found throughout the years talking about my NDE just allows myself to embrace it more, because it's just, as Pablo Picasso said, I would say the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of it is to give it away.
hmm.
And through years, this felt like a great burden. This did not feel like a gift. It led to a lot of complications and difficulties, and it was hard. What are most kids ascribed to do is just to fit in to be normal. And then when you have this paranormal experience,
Yeah.
it led me to feel quite isolated and different. And so
Hmm.
I tried as much as I can to take that beach ball and shove it in the water as much as I could.
Hmm.
But all the time I would just get these premonitions and downloads. I'm just like, leave me alone. Like, I just want to be a kid, play sports, do whatever,
Very
hang out with
important.
girls.
Yeah.
I don't know. But just that, again, the spirit realm. is nudging us in a different way. And when it was time to come out of the NDE closet, I knew it was the moment to do so. And that felt like an afterlife experience in itself. Like I was no longer caged in by societal constructs or
Yeah.
fears. I was able to, you know, be unencumbered and free with this experience.
And with your second book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, can you give
Yeah.
us a little bit of details? What kind of information do you have in there that you
Sure.
share with us?
Yeah, I call these my nicknames for these book is Life After Breath is my karma, my story,
Okay.
and The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is my
Is that
dharma,
Dharma? I knew you were going to
is
say it.
is is the meaning, is the purpose. So it's more, I think, if you ask me what prompted me to write this is a lot of people that I encountered, they maybe seem to be going through grief, had uncertainty, and or they wanted to have this experience. They
Hmm.
felt like, hey, you had this experience. You come from a very, it's almost like nepotism or privileged kind of viewpoint. But for me, I haven't experienced this. So how could I still know there's an afterlife? How could I connect to it? How do I have an NDE? Like I want to have an NDE. I want to have a self-induced NDE, and I have to really caution against that. Or people just want to wait to die so that they could see heaven. And I'd say, how do you know that you're not seeing it right now? How do you know
Hmm.
that you're not connected to it? But this book, gives a lot of the rungs in the ladder, like Jacob did in the Bible, who had um, his own experience with the angels who were coming up and down the ladder when his brother Esau was chasing him for his life. He was fleeing for his life,
Hmm.
and he saw the angels going up and down the ladder. And so that was a real, I think, God's sense of humor having this experience on
Yep.
a ladder in a playground being named Jacob, but it was also confirmation for that was a real moment in time. And once Jacob was able to wrestle his own demons, he became Israel. But this book is more like a rungs in the ladder kind of thing. And I say, the higher you go, the more that you can see. And through working out your own forgiveness, your own pain,
Hmm.
honoring your own mental health, and finding ways to vibrate as high as you can, you could really remember that and invoke that. And it becomes more of a belief, but rather a knowing, all this stuff. And you don't have to go through all the physical and psychological trauma that I and so many other experiencers have. You have it a lot easier, in fact. So this is more a degree of an empowerment. And I think the greatest thing we could do is to live our life as if we're looking back on it. And I think when you're able to have an awareness of life, it really could help to have resilience and more meaning and purpose, and if you will.
And how do people get are able to order your books?
Mostly Amazon.
Through
If they're
Amazon?
interested,
Okay.
they could contact me,
Okay.
and I could try
I'll
to
put
send
the
some
link
sign.
in the notes below.
Yeah, yeah. People could email me if they're interested in signed copies, and I try to mail them. It's a little bit easier domestically, but we could try to work with our Canadian neighbors too. But which never mind. But we have to
I
do a
knew
little bit
you were
more of
going to
that
go
these
there.
days. Um, no tariff on that. But anyway, the that's my greatest joy, and I think for myself, and I'm sure you probably experienced this where you were you might have been helped by something, whether that be a book in your life, and
Hmm.
you read that book and it just allowed you to get out of that dark night of the soul. And for myself, I just those books that I read in my younger years, the self-help New Age section, was so pivotal in my life. And I just said, don't put me in a grave, like put me on a library shelf when I go.
Yep.
Like that's
Oh,
and
I love
hopefully there'll
that
still
theory.
hopefully there'll still be libraries when I'm around and not everything will be digital, but maybe a digital library. But I think for me that's important because it's all about the ripple effect.
Yes.
That's really why we're here
Yeah.
is and you're doing that to the fullest extent in your life, and that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I am going to share something with you. There was one book that kind of helped started my journey. Like this is before even I was married, and I was kind of like alone in it. And I'm not even sure how. I think I picked up the book at like a yard sale.
Mhm.
And I remember reading it, and I was just like so fascinated by this woman. And but I love everything about her as an actress, as a performer, as a dancer, as a writer, her energy, everything about her. And I was like, what what possessed me to pick up that book? But I know that I
Mm,
was nudged. And I always say, when people ask you if there's one person that you could meet and have a conversation with, whether they're alive or not, who would that be? And you ready for this?
mm.
Shirley
Shirley
MacLaine.
MacLaine, is it? Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
Out on a limb.
It's my birthday twin. It's my that's my birthday twin.
That's your birthday. So
We
there
just
you go.
celebrate. It is.
But I
I
always say,
when you're saying that, I knew. Yeah.
you knew, right? And it's like she was the first to come out, tap into the whole new age
Right.
community and how everybody made fun of her, but she was way beyond her years, totally way beyond her years. And I
Yeah.
always say it usually does take a book. It will take that one book that will spiral, that ripple, And
Mhm.
when you're saying about that book, and I've read all her books, right? She's just a woman that I even saw her live
Yeah.
here in it was actually Richmond Hill, and she was just on stage by herself doing a talk, and I just felt like I wanted to jump on stage and sit in the other chair. I was just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she also
She,
helped with the whole get me started in the whole past life regression thing. This is years ago, which you
wow.
do as well, correct? You do
I do
PLR.
as well. And I don't think anyone could deny that past lives are real by looking at Shirley MacLaine. I mean, how do you possibly do all that she's done
Yeah,
in one lifetime with having no prior experience? I mean, just to be the singer or the dancer, the actress in one lifetime,
very
I don't know.
intelligent.
I don't think that's possible. And then she had the social activist part of
Mm-hmm.
herself. Then she had the spiritual teacher, there. So all that within one lifetime is not mathematically possible to me.
Yeah.
And that, is an embodiment of someone who's really carried over a lot of gifts and has been in a soul pod that carries over gifts. Her brother Warren Beatty as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Very gifted, very talented family. But I'm glad that you're mentioning her because she, for whatever reason, people in our community don't seem to talk about her as much as she probably should. I don't think she gets the respect that she should. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, she's on like I'm presenting at Edgar Casey this upcoming weekend. Like she's right up there with Edgar Casey to me, as
Mm-hmm.
far as I'm
Mm-hmm.
concerned, in terms of people who have transformed the world and have really enhanced consciousness on a global level. To me, she's an international treasure without question and a
Oh,
historical figure.
100%. I'm on her subscription list, so I receive maybe about
Wow.
every 2, 3 months. She sends out an email, just things that she's interested in. She just shares with her subscribers,
Yeah.
but they're like this long. It's like, okay, I'm gonna grab a cup of tea and sit down and read this, right? But
Yeah,
she's still
we have to yeah, I think she's in her early 90s now. We just have to wrap our arms around her and take her in for as much as we can. And yeah, I agree. She'd be someone to definitely meet. Although I'm always afraid to meet my idols because sometimes you're worried, like if you know what they say about doing that. But it would be a wonderful experience, and I'm sure she'd be super proud of
yeah.
the work that you do, and just continuing on her legacy and the impact that she had on you. Mm.
Yeah, I was even told when I was younger, if I had short hair, I'd look like her. And that's because of the red hair. And
I
and
could see it definitely.
me being the dancer, the performer as well. So that's what I'm saying is so many aspects of her that I love. And it reminds me a little bit of myself as well. Right. So yeah.
All you need to do is belt out "I'm Still Here" from Postcards from the Edge with Meryl Streep, and we're good.
Terms of Endearment,
Yeah,
one of my favorites.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And,
yeah,
and a
yeah.
fascinating book, if you've never read it, is The Camino, where she does a
Yeah, oh yeah.
pilgrimage
Oh. Hmm.
through the Camino within Spain. Oh, her story of that is just like she inspired me to
Yeah.
want to do that. And I always thought, okay, when I
Oh
hit
my God.
50, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Yeah. And then I turned 50 and then I end up with a hip replacement. So I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Oh,
Not going to happen. And
Camino de Santiago. That was a
yes.
beautiful book.
Yes. And I was attracted to Spain as well because when my grandmother was alive, that's where she vacationed a lot, was in Spain. So she was
Wow.
yeah. So a
Well,
lot of
well, well,
similarities.
we'll have to get you on tour and give readings on the Camino or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not in my next life maybe.
Yeah.
I say, well, maybe my 60th if my other hip doesn't go. I'll do it on my 60th instead of the 50th.
Why not? Well, I'll put another Shirley MacLaine book towards you, and she'd probably say, "Hey, staging while aging." You know,
Oh,
that's one of her
yeah.
last books.
That's one of her last books. Yep. Yep.
That's it.
For
That's it.
sure. Well, I know you have to run, so I just want to say thank you. Is there anything, any parting messages you want for my listeners to hear from you in regards to your NDE and what you've taken from that and how you've implemented it or integrated it into your life?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if anyone has any questions, you could, reach me on my website, jacobLcooper.com. You could also follow me and find me on social media, outlets. Certainly, this was a wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
conversation. I really recommend you guys continuing to check out Helen's podcast. She has
And
great
we're on the
work.
same platform.
Yes.
We're on Mind,
Mind,
Body,
Body, Spirit
Spirit. We're on the same platform.
FM.
Thanks, Diane
And
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 Tina.
what I would and then what I would recommend is, for people maybe new to this stuff, is to understand the value of being curious and exploring. Um, for instance, this planet was really found for what it is through people maybe challenging the ideologies of their time, that the
Mm-hmm.
planet was seen as a flat place, and then they challenged that, and they're able to extend those parameters and found new lands and a new Earth. And I think for ourselves as we grow, it's very important to constantly question, challenge, and extend our box and prism of reality. And that's how we really evolve and grow. And so I learned really for myself, having this was just beginning, and each day, at least for myself and hopefully for other people, is just a different opportunity to see reality in another perspective. But it starts with, as Shirley says, in order to get to the fruit of the tree, you must go out on a
No, on the
limb.
limb.
And I think for viewers out there, very important to just be able to challenge themselves and to be comfortable with the unknown. You might really find a lot more transformation and purpose in life to live while we're here.
Mm-hmm. And letting the inner child come out and play with that beach ball.
Oh, absolutely. And we are all children in God's playground, as I
Yeah.
experienced that on a direct basis in my NDE. So yes, enjoy, have fun. It's not all serious. And remember that, what you experience here is very real. The love that you experience, the relationships that you experience, the moments, those just don't pass away when the body goes. And so why wait for heaven? We create a new one in the here and now. And that's a beautiful opportunity. And plenty of souls are lining up to be here on this planet. And so, as much as people want to go over there, we're in a beautiful place being
Mm-hmm.
here. We have the opportunity to
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
make a lot of transformation for ourselves and other inhabitants here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So I just want to thank you for joining me on Spirit Chat. And I'm pretty sure my listeners are going to love this conversation, this chat. And until next time, my friends, I got a feeling you might be coming back.
Would love to, love to. On the podcast, hopefully not in incarnations, but why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe they want me to still be here. Who knows? But
Unless you
yeah.
got a third book in mind. Do
Yep,
you?
that's right. I always just ask spirit, whenever it's right,
Yeah.
just come through me. So
Sounds
it's
good.
brewing there. Yep.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time.
Thank you.